This is Ollie.
Welcome back to podcast 3. We are so
Woo-hoo.
excited. We have a special treat for you all. We had, in the first podcast, talked about fairy tales. So we
Mhm.
thought of going back to one of our favorites and a classic. So everybody should be able to know the basics of this story. Uh,
Yes.
so it's Beauty and the Beast, and we were thinking of talking about life lessons that we could draw from these things. So we are going to have Ollie jump right in with a quick summary of the original story.
Yeah. The original is a little bit different from, how Disney portrayed it. In the original, uh, Beauty, as she is called in the original story is from France. I think the earliest um, publication that they have for the story was from 1740. That's more or less debatable. That's kind of like the quoted thing, but just some smart facts for y'all to throw away. Um, so the or digest. You can either throw them away or digest them. It's just that's either way. Anyway, moving on. So in the original story, Belle's name is Beauty, which I guess kind of Belle Beauty, they're basically the same thing. Um, and she is a merchant's daughter, and she also has siblings. What? She has two sisters, and three brothers. Yes, three brothers, two sisters, and naturally they are all evil. Naturally.
Yep.
They are demon spawn. And somehow Beauty is the beautiful, pure, sweet, smart, humble one. She's also the youngest. So the way that the original story goes is they're super rich, and then her father loses all of his merchant ships, and then they are super not rich, and they move into a humble abode. And of course, her sisters are just like, "Oh my gosh, why?" And her brothers are just like, "Ugh." And her father's like, and so everything's really horrible. And then uh, they get news that one merchant ship has survived and it's in the port. And so their father goes and before he leaves, he says, "Hey, is there anything you guys want me to bring back?" Because they're all kind of assuming that their wealth is back and they can now go back to being super rich. And so, of course, the sisters are like, "Oh my gosh, I want like the latest clothes and all this beautiful stuff, and I just want all of it, like pronto." And the brothers are just like, "Yeah, suits of armor and like horses and like, yeah." And Beauty is like, "I don't need anything. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine." And her father's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, "Actually, I would like a rose because those don't bloom around here, and I would love one." So her father goes, and when he gets there, he finds out that actually everything got like repossessed. Like everything off of the ship, anything that did survive was taken because they had like billions of debts to pay off. So their situation has not changed. So he goes back, but as on his way back to their home, he runs into a big storm, gets lost. Enter the beast's castle. Enter the beast's The beast's castle just walks on. Hello. um,
Stay here. We've got shelter for you. Oh, the door's
so
open.
the enchanted castle is so enchanted that it like moves. Oh, like Howl's moving castle.
Yes, I
Hey,
totally
hey.
need that.
Totally different topic. Anyway, so he goes inside the castle and um, everything is just laid out and prepared for him. He is treated very well, and like it's all great. But he never sees his host. So he's like, okay, whatever. Next morning, he's getting ready to leave. Again, treated very, very well. As he's leaving, he happens to notice the beautiful rose garden beside the castle. And he's like, oh, wait a second. Belle wanted a rose. I can still at least bring one gift back for my child. So he goes and he plucks a beautiful rose. And of course, it's the best one of them all. Um, Naturally. So he takes the best one, and then poof, all of a sudden the beast shows up and he's like, excuse me, um, that's mine, and now so are you. And um, Belle's father is just like, no, please don't take me. I have a family. I need to go home. And the beast is like, well, Liv, correct me if I'm wrong. Facts are getting a little hazy. So the beast says, basically makes a deal with him. He's like, okay, you can go back home, but someone needs to come back and stay with me, whether it is you or one of your kids. Somebody's got to come back, and obviously the father is torn by that because he's like, oh my gosh, my children, especially, knowing Belle, especially since it was her gift that kind of got them into this mess. The father knew that Belle would be the one, she would volunteer to come back because she's super noble like that. But anyway, he takes the beast's deal and everything and goes back home, right? I'm remembering this correctly.
Yeah, so he goes home.
My brain just was like,
everybody, the rest of his family was like, oh shoot, we're poor again. And then they hear about the beast. Oh, he had been sent home with gifts, so he actually
that's right.
That was the thing. So they're like, ooh, maybe we could utilize this situation. But who cares about the dad having to, meet his doom? But you could still, we can, we know where he is now. Yeah, I know. And of course, Val is like, no, I'm coming back, and insisting, like you said. So
yep. So she goes back, and is treated very, very well. The beast is like, hey, what's mine is yours, mi casa su casa, and I am your servant. So enjoy, even though technically you're a prisoner here. And around this time, several things are happening at this point. First of all, obviously in the beginning, Belle is not too fond of the beast. But then obviously with all the time that they're spending together, they do develop a friendship and they become closer on a friendship level. However, friendship level for Belle. The beast, however, he basically proposes to her every single night. And she's like, look, not feeling it, pal, not there. You're nice, but you're not, she just friend zones him hardcore. And on top of this, she's also having these dreams. And in these dreams, she's essentially seeing Mr. Right, just a handsome prince, man of her dreams, perfect. And she's kind of holding out for that guy. Like, she's just like, hey, this, and I think there's also like a fairy or something that also comes to her in the dream.
There's a woman that talks.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the mentor personality or character.
Yep. And it's all like, oh, it's not as it seems, and blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, but yeah, Bella's holding on to these dreams. And then she eventually, I think her father gets sick, and she wants to go back and visit him. And the beast is like, okay, that's fine. But as his thing, he makes a deal with her. He gives her an amount of time to go. And he says on this day, like I think it was like a month or something later, or 3 weeks later or something, you have to come back. Like, you need to come back here. And then he also gives her a magic mirror so that she can check back in on the castle. And the coolest part of the story, personally, in my opinion, he gives her a magic ring. I love this because I'm just like, can I please get a teleportation ring? Like, it's not just like any, rinky-dink little ring. It's a magic teleportation ring that will poof her back to the castle as soon as she puts it on. And I'm like, that is so nice, because then you can sleep in and you don't have to, like, you can like sleep to the last minute before you have to go to work and then just poof your way into work. Or if you want to get out of work really, really fast, you can poof your way out of work. So, I'm like, that's just super cool in my opinion. Why would Disney take that out? So many things you can do with a magic ring. Come on. So anyway, so she goes and visits her family. The time is up, but her sisters, being the evil witches that they are, um, they see how well she's being treated, and they're just like, well, that's not fair. Like, oh my goodness. Belle, sweetheart, my love, why don't you just, like, stick around and blah, 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 blah. And Belle somehow doesn't see past this, and she stays past the time that she made the deal with the beast over. Like, so first day of her extended vacation, she decides to check back in on the castle, and lo and behold, the beast is by the roses, pretty much dead. Like, he's toast. And she's like, oh my heavens, I've made a mistake. Magic ring poofs back as she comes back, and she sees him, and she suddenly realizes just how much he means to her, and what his friendship, what his companionship actually is to her. Her love for the beast revives him, brings him back, not only revives him, but turns him back into her handsome prince, Mr. Right from her dreams. Oh my gosh. Tell us of this time. Moving right along. Anyway, so yeah, and unlike most fairy tales, actually, this one does end with them living happily ever after. Um, did I miss anything?
No, that was a really good summary of what basically the story was. So there we have it.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Yay! Awesome, awesome.
it's slightly different from the Disney version, but
Mm-hmm.
I,
I
all,
miss you, Magic Ring.
I know all of these stories though have, or versions anyway, all have
Mm.
very similar themes. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The themes don't really change much,
exactly.
much. Anyway, so yeah, so now what we're going to do, we're going to kind of, based off of that quick summary, which I actually do highly recommend that y'all kind of go and look up the original story. I was lazy and also couldn't necessarily get out anywhere to find an actual copy of the original story, but I highly recommend reading it and, seeing what you guys get out of it as well, expounding upon it. Um, that's really, really cool. But for right now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be picking out some of the major themes that stood out to us two, and we're going to kind of discuss them and elaborate and share them with y'all. So hopefully you enjoy it. Let us get right to it. Liv, do you want to start us off with your first point?
Yes. Okay, so it was interesting that when you view her name as beauty,
Mm,
that it wasn't just physical beauty. It was
mm-hmm.
whole movement of character and decisions that she's had made in her life, despite
Yep.
everything going on around her. And I think that was largely why her siblings never really accepted her or and felt envious, was because they wanted what she had,
Yeah.
all the while not realizing they could, as long as
Mm-hmm.
they could, just stop for a few minutes in their selfish fantasy world and realize that every choice that she has ever made has required sacrifice in
Mm-hmm.
marriage.
Yeah.
And so it's all about self-discipline and realizing what's good and what's better.
Yeah. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, so
That's, yes, queen.
her
Feeling that.
yeah, her name Belle is very well chosen, cleverly emphasized throughout this story, as she's um, lost status, lost her own mom at some
Yep.
point.
Mhm.
and had gained riches and handled it amazingly because she was
Mhm.
more focused on knowledge and getting to know people in the situation. And I think largely, even though the dad is not often seen as a very, strong masculine figure in a
Mhm.
story, I want to just point out in this one particular story is that he's actually, I think, one of the key reasons why she has such a strong will in
Yeah.
and was able to exercise it in making really good decisions for the most part,
Yep.
except for the one time where she was tempted and she gave in. So
Yeah.
her name, eh, encapsulates who she is, and I think
Yeah.
that very important as for us. Like, I can't help asking, okay, what does my name mean? Like, do we live up
Mm.
to that? For instance, Olivia means peace, so it has the root word of you know uh, bringing
Olive.
to mind, yeah, olive
Mhm.
branches, which were
Mhm.
symbols of wealth and peace, because
Yep.
the olive oil is um, the most common trademark throughout the
Mhm. Mhm.
realms. So all of these imageries is when you start putting it all together, you start thinking, okay, so this person's character influences this person's decision and her
Yeah.
purpose in life. And I think that's why I would say that even though her father is very background story, really, he had, I think, the most influence in her life.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's definitely because they, out of the whole family, they also, those two have the most in common, which does kind of make you wonder, ooh, what happened with the rest of the kids? Oh my heavens. But, you can
Yeah.
never quite tell with offspring.
Well, it's kind of a fascinating thing that you mentioned that, because the going back, the parents' responsibility is to train the children.
Hmm.
But at some point, the children have the freedom to say no. They always
That
have the
is true. Hmm.
say, "Hey, I'm choosing to do this, whether or not you agree with it or not."
Yep.
And so, at some point, they become a master of themselves, and there's no leeway to just not take your own responsibility. And
Yep. Yep.
and so, um, yeah, that
Yeah, that's very true.
but
Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's a good point. Um, at the point of the story, the siblings really have no excuse for their poor life decisions, really, because it's like, yeah, y'all are smarter than that. Y'all know better than that. And at this point, it's just, yeah, the choices that they make. It's very true. Very true. Um, yeah, the 2 points that I have um, are kind of from later in the story. I don't know. Do any of your other points? I figured we could kind of try to go a little chronologically here. Um,
yeah. So, um, yeah, we
unless at,
a little
unless
bit.
at this point the points are all kind of at the end of the story anyway for both of us, then it's like I guess it doesn't really matter who goes first. Um,
No, I was actually going to just do a. So we touched a little bit on morality, but
mm,
the there's the idea of what's right and what's good to do and what's wrong
mm-hmm,
is a is witnessed throughout this story as you read it, and it's very subtle. I think that's what causes Belle to be such a powerful example of a woman, because um, she's the example, an image of what a true princess would be, in a sense.
mm-hmm,
She's going after what is better for
mm-hmm,
someone, and not merely just accepting her circumstantial cultural demands of the time, I guess. She was
Yeah.
doing hard work and doing what is needed to function properly, even though she totally lost the middle class, like probably having at least one servant to help her. And
Yeah.
she probably took that role and was having to do a lot of extra work that nobody else wanted to do.
Yeah. No,
But
it,
she actually blossomed a lot
oh
more
yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
It's interesting actually now that you mention that, because I was just thinking, yeah, how was it that Belle was kind of so chill with like, oh yeah, I'll do the cleaning. Well, I realized her siblings were just like awful to her. They were just downright abusive to her. So her best friends in the entire house besides her father were probably the servants. She probably got along really, really well with them. And she probably like um that's probably where she learned how to do, because if you think about it, when they were still rich, like her siblings probably didn't really know how to do anything because they didn't do anything to begin with. So then when they went from, the top of the top of the barrel to the bottom, her siblings were like, "Excuse me, who's gonna like wash my clothes? I don't know how to do this." And Belle's just like, "Oh, I chill with the servants before. Like, I would talk to them and watch them work. I totally got this." So that, because that did cross my mind. I was like, how does Belle know how to do all this stuff in her, like, because she was also rich, technically speaking, before. So it's like, but her best friends in the house were probably the servants because her siblings were so horrible to her. Interesting thought that I had just now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So again, that's the character development of her
Yeah. Yeah.
continuing to be faithful, even though the time's rougher now.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically shines in a way that that both, aggravates the situation, but also raises her up higher in other people's
Mm-hmm.
situations.
Mm-hmm. She
Um,
had a good foundation of relationship and of the people, she grew up seeing what seeing how hurtful her siblings could be. She was able to understand,
mm,
like, she had empathy and compassion on other people. So like that's also something that's helpful when you're not stuck in your own head, and you can actually be aware that there are people around and that there are people that you need, and that like you need them to pour into you, and then you also need to pour into them. You can't just be a taker, you also have to be a giver. And I think Belle, due to her circumstance prior to them losing all their money, I think she learned how to be more people minded and not be stuck in her own head, because she was on the receiving end of people who were stuck in their own heads.
yeah, exactly. And that's very good point to launch into, that, the idea of a soul, and
Mm,
we're very different from animals and everything in
mm,
creation, because we have that ability to realize self reflection and
yeah.
have a conscience saying, um, these are things that you shouldn't be doing.
Yep.
Everybody, everybody in the universe knows that stealing is wrong, or has at
Yeah.
least the information to know that taking something that doesn't belong to you is, you know, not not helpful to a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's things like that where self awareness and being made in the image of God,
Mm-hmm.
some in a being that is better than and bigger than we ever even know about, is
Yeah.
very kind of has a weight to it that
Mm-hmm.
I often think about. So it's a very much more striking picture that we have lost the image, perfect image of good, the ultimate good, And the I like this story because in particular because it focuses on the beast, who's a man who he lost his way. He chose to be a very selfish person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the fault of his parents or even just or even some of the servants, because and that's where it's very interesting in Disney. They make that clear. There's this one little short script thing that is easily, missed, but the servants were like, "Hey, it was our responsibility in some ways that
Mm-hmm.
he became what he was." What he
Yeah. Yeah.
And but in the story though, he always his first reference to himself was, "I am a beast,"
Mm.
versus um, uh, "That's what I am," but not who he is. So in a way,
Yeah.
I think it's a story of how Belle, in her gentleness and beauty and like in wisdom in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
gently exposed a mirror to him saying, "Hey, there is a way to get you from point A to point B." And I think when he had first met her, he had lost all hope.
Yeah.
Where, like in the newest version, live version, Dan Stevens does a wonderful job with
Oh yeah. Mm.
Evermore. It's really great with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is it? But in our culture currently, it's interesting is that monsters are very emphasized, um,
Mm.
but they're often, I think, bordering on the misunderstood too, because not
Oh
all of
yeah.
them are human. So you can play around with a whole bunch of theology and philosophy for that, but um, in this particular case, I think the writer represented monsters well because
Mm.
he was human. She kept whoever, is it a she that
Yeah. Yep. She.
she
Mm-hmm.
kept in mind that he was a human, former human, and had a heart and
Mm-hmm.
was able to do a powerful story arc of redemption story.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's probably why it even became such a classic, um,
Yeah.
and probably the most well loved next to Cinderella when
Oh
you
yeah.
think about it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good point. That's very, very interesting. And that kind of goes into really it goes really well into one of my points. Kind of to jump forward a little bit to um, Belle with her dreams. Um, it was interesting to me how, for her, she saw Mr. Right in her dreams and she kind of fixated on, like, oh, he's a handsome prince and he's, you know, funny and he's clever and he's kind and he's smart and strong and blah, 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 blah. Um, and yet here's the beast proposing every single night. And he, um, he's rough around the edges. He has growing to do, which through the kindness of Belle, he starts to do that growing. He begins to change. He begins to see hope. He begins to see that he doesn't have to. He might look like a beast, but that doesn't mean he has to be one. Um, and and Belle almost misses that. Like, she's so wrapped up in the handsome prince, and then thinking like
Yeah.
that's like that's the goal, to have that perfection, to have that beauty. And it kind of brought up a quote from the Harry Potter books and movie, I think. Well, definitely the movie. I'm pretty sure it's in the books too, where Dumbledore says to Harry, he says, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live."
Mm,
Um, I thought that was really cool because, like, your Belle was like, she had essentially what she was looking for right in front of her, and because she was kind of wrapped up in the appearance of it, she almost missed it. And that kind of made me think about our world today and how typically we, like, I realize that beauty is not synonymous with talent or ability or intelligence. Oftentimes, if somebody looks really amazing, some people will assume that they also are just that they are amazing. Like, well, they look fantastic. How can they not be amazing? Like, they just have to be. That's not entirely. That's not like, oh, no, honey, that's not how that works. Um, um, you can't just assume that because something is beautiful that it's going to be beneficial. However, and I was thinking about this just today. I was like, interesting. And I tread carefully saying this too, because I'm like, I'm not perfect. Where, beauty is not synonymous with talent or ability or intelligence. However, these things can be definitions of beauty. When you, so like, for example, um, someone who loves architecture, like it takes a lot of intelligence to be into that kind of work.
Mhm.
To someone who loves that, to someone who has that level of intelligence, they see a building and they don't even see the actual building. They see the blueprint of the building. To me, um, I'm like, oh, look at all those lines and those numbers. Well, how interesting. But to them, they're just like, whoa, this is so gorgeous. Like, I just want to like, oh, this is amazing. Or to someone who, um, you or to someone who is like really skilled with, their hands, like with,
Mhm.
handyman or whatever. There is a level of beauty in their ability. You know,
Mhm.
they don't necessarily look beautiful. It's not really about the outside, but it's what they do, who they are, how they do what they do. That can be a level of beauty in and of itself. And it's like for Belle and the Beast, she was looking at the physical and she missed the fact that nobody can make her laugh like Beast can.
Mhm.
Nobody has been there on those nights where she was lonely like Beast was, or and if she had actually kind of paid a little bit closer attention, she would have realized that Beast could understands that more than anybody. That isolation, that loneliness, that, outside looking in type feeling. Because for Belle being stuck there, she was now just as stuck as he was in a
Mm.
way.
That's interesting. It sounds.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so then I kind of took it a step further from that point. I was like, that's one aspect of beauty. But then I was like, the truest definition of beauty is love.
Mm.
Um, because again, the Beast was rough around the edges and he had been through a lot. So he wasn't necessarily the most socially adept person. He wasn't Prince Charming.
Yeah.
you know um but at the end of the day, the thing that made him attractive to Belle, um was his kindness and his love, the fact that they became friends, the fact that they could understand each other, the fact that they connected. There was an empathy there. Contrastingly, take Belle's sisters, who were outwardly gorgeous, like they were just beautiful, they were everything that, they were the envy, the belle of the ball. um and yet their lack, and I would almost say their inability to love,
Mhm.
made their beauty absolutely worthless. Like it didn't matter how beautiful they were. The fact that they didn't love, they couldn't love.
They were
It
never
just,
taught to, I think. Even though
it, yeah.
showing them the love, they never could understand it
Mm-hmm.
in totally different languages in the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah.
some.
So that just really, it was very interesting to me, and it kind of made me think of like, 1 Corinthians 13, about how, Paul's talking about how, he could do like, he could, uh, speak the tongue of angels, and he can, you know, um, just, go to the stake to be burned as a martyr. He can like do all these really amazing good things, but if he doesn't love, it doesn't matter. If he's not showing love, if he's not communicating God's love, it's not going to matter. And then it also made me think of John 13:35, how, um, Jesus even says, by this all men will know you're my disciples if you love. So it's like, if you want something to be truly beautiful, whether it's visually or in terms of like talent, ability, or intelligence, dress it up in love and you're golden.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not.
And it's beautiful in a way because of the love.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, not to be like, oh, don't care about the outward appearance at all. It's fine to gussy yourself up and to look good. And if you look beautiful, like if you have natural beauty, God has blessed you with that. There's a reason for that. Um, but at the end of the day, it's connecting with people. It's loving on people. It's loving yourself. It's loving um, what you do, who God made you to be, the people around you. That's got to make the difference. And I think that's how it was for Belle and the Beast. At the end of the day, it was their love for each other that ended up saving both of their lives and redeeming the direction that their lives were going in. Because it was not looking good for either of them, if you think about it.
Yeah. I find it interesting that in this story, as you were talking, as you were mentioning, some ways to define or different perspectives of beauty.
Mm-hmm.
This writer or author actually was focusing on the female, while
Mm.
he was actually focusing on the male, the beauty of men in a sense, or handsomeness is probably, but and that's where it's interesting because Gaston is such a manly man that everybody would be like, that's the person who will get
Yep.
the person with, like, not even having to try. Just because
Mm-hmm.
it just messes with people's heads because of
Yeah.
his physical beauty or masculinity, I guess. But at the same time, he was so dense in the sense that he has nothing in him that would
Yeah.
attract a person of character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he's a hunter that becomes the hunted in the end of the story, and
Yeah.
he um kind of shows the side for the men of the dangers of
Yeah.
that physical attractiveness for the females because
Mm-hmm.
um, it's natural, yes, but at the same time, he almost idolized it and
Oh, yeah.
so self focused that I don't think he. It's a wonder that he can walk straight. But he's this person that is not a person. He almost became a
Yeah.
god, like in a sense. He pales a lot in comparison to how the Beast has so much character because he had to change really, really quickly, realizing he can't just snap at Belle and expect her to understand where he's coming from. So in the
Yeah.
Disney, I find it very wisely and cleverly done that in these short, quick shots that you see his journey of vulnerability in a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He's afraid, he's uncertain, he's doubtful, he's angry, he's
Mm-hmm.
raging fire of justice, trying to protect Belle at a point where he didn't even
Yeah.
like her at that point in time, but he
Yeah.
recognized somewhere deep inside that not only was she right, but she's also a woman. She's exposed out there. She's someone precious that and special and needed. And that doesn't make Belle or um, her beauty less beautiful or even
Mm-hmm.
less
Yeah.
powerful. weak. It just is the truth. She's not as strong as a guy. And
Yeah.
that in many ways, her beauty story is an example for girls to follow in a healthy way, but for also the men.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, there's not enough men of character like Belle's father to say, okay, son, you do not treat women the same way as your buddies.
Mm-hmm.
They're special. They are, you're going to meet someone you need to treat like a princess for the rest of your life. And then you're queen because if you become the man and treat her with the kindness that she deserves or does
Mm.
deserve, she will
Yeah.
respond in ways that um, will be phenomenally greater in expectation than you will ever believe. You need to be bigger than her in order to for her to also change alongside you.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that we don't, as women of today, we get confused because we've been told you need to be a man in a sense to
Mm.
in order to be heard, to be respected, to be um, to be acknowledged as a person, and we don't.
Mm.
We really don't. And I find that sad because once we step up to be a man and have to protect ourselves in this overly much, then the man has no opportunity to step up and um, be your champion.
Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm.
If you see what I mean, like I find that it's very
Yeah.
it, this story has so much more depth when you just stop and think about the little changes of the verbs and her decision making and her thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Just step into her role and be like, what would I have done?
Yeah.
Would I have done as well as Belle? And if
Yeah.
like, what can I change to make it not just for your own the thing about beauty is that you don't normally see beauty on yourself. It,
Mm. Yeah.
so it's this really beautiful gift of having um, the results of your actions be reflected back to you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
um, and together you become better for it as a community.
Yep. Yeah.
You become healthier and stronger and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when there's like that mutual love and respect working both ways, when those two are seen as a two-way street between men and women, we start to work in tandem with each other, and then we're twice as strong when we actually have that consideration for what the other can handle and what the other can do, um, and how our different giftings complement each other,
mm-hmm.
pair them. It's like cheese and wine.
Liquid and solid. You have combined them. It's really good.
Mm, chef's kiss. Mm, mm-hmm. Just we must be hungry like all the time whenever we talk because we always use these food analogies. But hey, they're just so perfect. What can we say? um,
One of these days, you'll just see that little dish in front of us that says
pardon me, we're just snacking here. We're cool. We're cool. Um, yeah. Um, were you? I don't want to like rush past if you weren't done um, elaborating on this point. Were you
no,
good? I don't want to
I think that's pretty
speed
much.
along too. Okay, cool. Because I was just going to touch on my second point real quick here. Um, do you have any other thoughts to add in? Any other points that we want to talk about today, just so that we know how much, just so we don't keep our beloved viewers here too long. We could talk all night.
Yeah. No, let's go to your point.
Okay, cool. So my second and final point is in regards to when Belle goes home after having made the deal with Beast to return on a certain day, and then she doesn't. I always thought that was very interesting to me, that Belle, being a woman of integrity, um, she had a slip in judgment. She had a moment where she was very, just, very human, very what we all are. And she broke her promise. She went back on her word, which, it happens to all of us, to the best of us, to, yeah, just all of us. We all have those days where we're not quite on top of our game, and clearly this was one of those days for Belle. And that, just the fact that she went back on her word was very interesting to me, because that's something that God has kind of been talking to me about, is being a woman of my word. We're called to be people of integrity and honesty, and that means if you say something, if you agree to something, if you tell people that you'll be there, or you tell people, like, if things work out, I mean, things happen. You might run a little late, or something comes up, family emergency, that's an exception. But typically, when you say yes to something, mean it, and that made me kind of think about how words have such power. Our words are very incredible. They're very dangerous, actually, because of the power that they wield. And because we have that ability, because we've been given that responsibility, we really need to be aware of our words. And we also we need to be even more aware of the people at the end of our words. Everything that we say, there's someone at the end of it, and we need to think for a second, like, is this going to be helpful to someone, or is this going to be detrimental? Because words can end a life before it even begins. And I'm it's like, I'm kind of thinking about, like, when a child, when an adult, a parent, a friend, anybody says to a child, like, what's wrong with you, or, oh, you're not that smart, or you're never going to amount to anything. I mean, that cuts you off right there. You literally are cut off at the knees, and that can be so detrimental to, like, that's what you're going to carry with you as you grow up. You're going to carry that into every situation, and so it's just like, when we're speaking, whatever we say, we need to think about it. We need to stop and be like, are we cultivating life with our words, or are we cultivating death? And it's very interesting in the case of Belle and the Beast, because when she goes and breaks her promise, the Beast almost dies. Mm-hmm. And it's like, in a way, like, her saying one thing and then ending up going in a whole other direction and breaking that promise. Those words were meant to sow life, and they ended up almost sowing death. And so that kind of made me think, like, what we say, everything we say, there's a consequence, there's a reaction to it, whether it's something positive or something negative. I mean, we don't have to be necessarily afraid of that, like, second guessing everything we're about to say, like, oh my gosh, is this okay? Should I say that? Should I say, It's like, we don't have to be afraid of everything that we say, but we just need to be aware that sometimes the consequences of what we say, of our words, it can be the consequences can be pretty hefty sometimes, if we're not careful, if we're just kind of throwing words around, it could end up doing a lot more harm. And oftentimes the harm is something that you don't necessarily see, um, at least not right away. When you speak death into people's lives, you don't see those wounds. You don't see the the deterioration that's happening inside of a person, but you see it manifest in other ways. Um, People might not, it's like I I'll just speak from personal experience. Um, I have gone through verbal abuse and living within that type of atmosphere, and it messes with your head where you walk into situation, you don't even walk into the situation.
Yeah.
You are right, you're looking at the situation that you haven't even walked into yet, and you're already defending yourself. You're already trying to explain yourself to people. You're already expecting people to oppose you,
Mm.
um, because you feel like you're not enough. You haven't you don't you're not able to hear past that tape that's on replay that's saying like, you can't do that, you're not good enough for that. You sure? Sometimes that's the worst, when people are just like, when they say those doubts, sometimes when people say it as a fact, sometimes we get a little feisty and we're just like, says I'm gonna do what I want. But when people so doubt, when they're like, are you sure? Do you really, like, is that, that can sometimes be even more like, then you're going through life just second guessing everything.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like I said, I have experienced firsthand, just what that can do. And so it's like, it was just very interesting for me to kind of see that consequence playing out for Belle, where she has such integrity, but then she kind of misrepresents her words
Mm.
in a way, and um, those words and lack thereof as well end up um, nearly costing Beast his life. So I just thought that was a really good lesson for people, especially in today's world where there's not a lot of integrity. People do throw words around very carelessly, especially on social media. It's so easy to be able to say, well, that's really stupid. Like, what's wrong with that person? Or why would you even do that? Or why would that? Or like it's just easy to sow death in abundance when you're doing it from a screen. There's no the accountability and the consequence of your words. It doesn't touch you as closely, when there's a screen between you and the person that you're talking to. But nothing has changed just because there's a screen there. Your words are still reaching people. They still have power. They're still sowing something. So, for me, the lesson taken out with this was like, I need to weigh my words before I just spew them out. Consider what I'm saying, and is it going to sow life or death? And then am I going to be able to stand by what I said later on? We're people. We're not gonna be perfect. We're gonna make mistakes. Words are gonna come back to bite us later. Things are,
Mm-hmm.
but having that awareness is something that is very important. And that was just another thing that really stood out to me personally from this story, was the consequences of words and not standing by what you say.
Yeah. That's definitely part of the moral, being an honorable person,
Mm-hmm.
and being trustworthy. To say, you know, yes, be yes, and your no, no. And
Yeah.
um, we get so fixated on trying to please everyone that I think that sometimes we end
Yeah.
up compromising in ways that are not healthy for anybody. And it just ends up confusing and making things worse. But that's a very good point about words. I just can't help but think. I'll try to keep this short, but but Jesus is the Word.
Mm.
That's his one of his names. Or I don't know if it's a title or a name or a characteristic.
Yeah.
In all three, it has ramifications on our own lives because he spoke to us as people, even when
Yeah.
we're like little monsters running around, just saying, "Hey, we're gonna tear each other apart," and like, by the way, we don't like you either. So, and of course, that doesn't end well either, which just makes it worse. But yet, his love was so powerful that he stepped into the mess
Yeah. Yeah.
and changed.
Thank goodness, because I can't handle this by myself. I am a mess, and I can't even claim that I'm a hot mess because I'm just
Everybody has darkness and sin in
Mm,
ourselves, but we're not left alone as monsters. He's
no.
the true beauty, our ultimate image that we were to reflect, and he redeemed us again. And
Yes.
that's just Beauty and the Beast is a very small sliver of a reflection of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very beautiful universal truth that we can hold on to, is that even though we may disagree on some of these points as the
Mm.
audience is listening, but that's okay. At least
Yeah.
be open to thinking about it and saying,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
We don't always have to agree
yeah,
in order to get along.
yeah. So, well, I think that's all we have for you all. So
I think so. Yeah. So,
we'll
what about you guys, though? What are some of like the points that stood out to you guys? What are some thoughts that you take away from what we've talked about tonight? Let us know down in the comments below. We love to read your thoughts, and while you're at it, comment on what your favorite fairy tale is, and yeah, yeah, what your thoughts are on those. We would love to hear. We
yeah.
love hearing from you guys.
If there's a lot of one, maybe, who knows, we'll think about reading that story and doing a podcast on it. So
You never know. Yeah. So, but until then, all of our beautiful people, thank you so much for joining us. Have a beautiful night, a beautiful day, a beautiful life. We will see you next